Brendan McCullum said something intriguing on Sky after the loss to South Africa. He was asked if batting first made it harder to play BazBall. I don't know if they used the phrase BazBall, they should have. Because England played that way earlier this summer, and now they had to bat first against South Africa. And he didn't know, he looked a little bit confused.
This is the last knock. My dad told me to say this.
And the truth is that we don't really know that much about BazBall and the New England. They steamrolled through their first 4 tests against 2 of the best teams in the world. But all of us saw the signs that while this could have been a new way to play test cricket, it could have also just been a crazy, freaky set of circumstances. Injuries, ill preparation, form, new coach captain bounce, flat day 4-5 wickets, and those soft COVID-y balls. And so all of this happened, but we were also all watching, seeing the records, the chases, the innings. You can be as skeptical as you want. I'm fairly skeptical. And you can list out all the weird things that went into their wins. And I kind of just did a minute ago. But it was still 4 consecutive come from behind big test chases that England knocked off one after the other. But let's go back to the skeptical bit for a minute. Because there was a tanning issue with the Duke's balls during COVID. Leather is a weird thing, as any dominatrix will tell you. And it doesn't always behave. Baseball had a similar problem with their balls during COVID. And so those soft balls certainly helped England when they decided to smack the hell out of whatever that Crimson Traveller was in those early games. And then South Africa turn up and we get a new batch of balls. And suddenly the thing is acting like they used to in England. In fact, for this match, it was even more brutal. During those 4 tests, you can see just how much the Pacers struggled in England compared to other modern times. Then you get the new improved rock back in proper bowlers' hands and it's bye-bye runs. So if that is the case, good luck bashing the ball around as it's hooping everywhere. There's also the bowling attack that you need to look at, a fully fit and functioning one. Without relitigating went on with New Zealand, essentially in every match they ended up with fewer bowlers than when they started. They also made this all worse by not using Daryl Mitchell enough when the conditions were in his favour and pretending that Michael Bracewell was a frontline bowler. India didn't have the injuries and probably only made a slight error in picking Shardul Thakur over Ashwin. All things considered, a fairly marginal change. But when the soft ball came about, Thakur went it over a runner ball in the test matches. That wouldn't have been the end of the world, but Mohammad Siraj completely lost his rhythm as well, meaning that India only had 3 bowlers they could trust as England was smashing the soft balls. South Africa go into games with 5-men frontline bowling attacks. There are no Bracewells, de Grandhomes or Thakurs in this lineup at all. Not that they even needed all of those bowlers. Ngidi basically didn't bowl in the first innings, and Maharaj actually didn't bowl. Nokia went for runs up front, but he, Rabada and Janssen took wickets at pace, so it didn't matter. Ngidi only bowled a few overs in the second, but got rid of Root. Maharaj took 2, one of which was Crawley, who went first. Janssen and Rabada were consistently threatening whenever they had the ball, and Nokia kept going for runs and kept taking wickets at a similar kind of strike rate. Maybe we would have seen weakness as they got tired, or maybe a partnership had formed, or Nokia's run rate could have caused more problems with an out-of-shape ball. But the match didn't last long enough for the bowlers to really be tested, and judging by the ball movement, they would have been fine anyway. Nokia was bowling 94-mile-an-hour wobble balls that were darting back like off-spinners. And while there's been a lot of hype around BazBall as England have been winning so much, LinkedIn is part of my online writing course because there are so many cricketers and coaches that are on there. But even outside of that, me and a fellow journalist used to play a game with LinkedIn where we tried to guess what job a former Shield player may have based on their playing style. Surprisingly, we were often wrong. You, however, can use LinkedIn for far more important reasons, like creating a job post in minutes. Add the hashtag hiring and off you go. You can try screening questions to find people with the right skills and experiences, because if you're a small business, well, LinkedIn is a large pond. So don't use this terrific platform to see what Graham Vimpani is up to since he's 100 against the West Indies. Instead, visit linkedin.com/Inca, as in Inca, the back half of my podcast, Red Inca, and you can post a job ad for free. Terms and conditions to apply. McCullum has said pretty consistently that they won't actually be that consistent with it. This is a new method they're still trying to work out. And he averaged 38 in Test cricket and made a triple century and many spectacularly shit scores as well. He didn't always play BazBall himself, and he is Baz. And that the 4 wins came in a row was always nice for narrative, but it was obviously, a bit random. McCullum and Stokes don't know how this is going to end up. They just know where it was going, and they flipped it. And things can go right if you're playing that kind of attacking cricket, even with a team as flawed as England. And with that same dodgy team, when it doesn't go right, well, it's a 2-day test. That's the risk involved in their style. But you could argue that England never really went for South Africa by attacking too much here. And McCullum has actually argued that. Maybe Alex Lees was out over-attacking in the first innings, but it was a bit more of a shit push than anything flagrant. Bairstow was playing a drive, but the ball he got was pretty special. Crawley missed a sweep in the second innings, and folks poked at one. It was really only the captain who was out over-attacking, and that was when the game was gone and he was batting with the tail. So you see McCullum's point. When England were batting, the ball kept moving, the bowling unit didn't fall apart, and England reverted to a lack of form. And when you're talking about the bad old days of the last regime, what would you say are the 3 main weaknesses that come to mind? Top order batting, slips catching, and dismissing the tail. McCullum can try and minimize these problems, and sometimes he will be lucky. But I think it's hard to win when you drop the opposition's top order, yours doesn't make any runs, and the tail keeps annoying you. These aren't small problems, and vibes-based positive thinking can only do so much. And so that gives McCullum and Stokes the same top order problems that Silverwood and Root had. The middle order has been more or less acceptable for a while, but getting them to come in early just doesn't help anyone. If BazBall is to work, especially in England, they can't be 42 and 57 for 3. Because that isn't BazBall. That is Joe Root or bust. And I think we know that's less a strategy and more a failed prayer at this point. But let's talk about South Africa sending England in and whether it bothered the BazBall ethos. McCullum's uncertainty was interesting. And the hardest innings to bat in England in the last 5 years has been the first. And they did manage to skip that for 4 consecutive matches, which was handy. But there is something even more funny about this. Even though England's magic innings was the 4th, they obviously didn't win their games there alone. They often did very well with the ball in the 3rd and sometimes the 1st innings. But they generally still ended up far behind in the game, and then they went bang boom wallop and they won the match at the end. So there's something funny about the fact that against South Africa, they forfeited that final innings with 2 absolutely awful batting displays up against, to be fair, a rolling bowling lineup. But BazBall wasn't just about slogging in the 4th innings. It was about mindset, length, vibes, attitude, field plans, and never giving up. It could be the most glorious theory of all time, but it does need a decent team to pull it off. This is quite obviously still a flawed, dysfunctional England side. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have tried anything this dramatic in the first place. Even West Indies' four-paceman of the apocalypse comes about after India smashed their spinners. And McCullum does have a point. When you looked at this test match, I mean, the very brief amount of time that we actually got to see any of this test match, England weren't really playing what they had been preaching. This may not have been a BazBall bust, but a failure to BazBall at all. And yet even within that, we just don't know if this will work. Were England unwilling to attack the moving ball, or were they unable? And will they be able to win consistently if their 3 core issues aren't solved? I don't know. But let's be honest, England continues to entertain. 5 tests under Baz, and they've been box office in every game, for good, bad, and ugly.